life living and making a living can sometimes wear us out, grind us down, and dull our senses. So for a keen mind and a sharp contributive edge that can make it all easier and better and more productive, let's take some time to sharpen our axe. Stay with us right now for Life Talk.
Hello, I'm Gina Fitt, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk with Vern Moses. Welcome to another in our series of ongoing verbal essays brought to you in this television format. It's a pleasure to have you join our program today. Vern, you know, I've just got to tell you, I've had so many opportunities over the last few weeks and months to share some of the things I've learned on this show with people that are important to me in my life. And amazingly enough, one of the simplest and most profound things that I've discussed with people is the idea of two primary emotions, love and fear. And a lot of times people say, you know, I'm just really struggling with so-and-so, and we just don't ever seem to see eye to eye, and they always have it out for me, or whatever. They're struggling with someone in their life, and that relationship is not going smoothly, whether it's a coworker, a child, a partner. And it's amazing to me to see how this light bulb just kind of comes on there in their head. And we say, well, there's two feelings, and everything we do comes from one or the other, love or fear. And how quickly they can distinguish where feelings come from.
Oh, exactly.
It's like there's no question all of a sudden.
Once you get the technology, boy, it clears everything out. It's wonderful.
And it's just really funny to see them look at this and say, well, if they're coming from fear, am I going to respond with fear? Or am I going to respond with love? And which kind of emotion gives me power to truly create something new and interesting in that relationship? So I wanted to share that with you. It's worked for me at the office as well as in my personal life.
Yeah, it's universal, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
I remember some years ago, Dr. Uri Taylor here in town, who was an international academic, actually. He studied in 17 different countries, had a double doctorate, was an educator. He came to see Life Formula one time, and I don't know if I told you this story before or not.
I don't think so.
But in a break, he was outside, and he said, well, my son had dragged him there kicking and screaming. You know, he didn't want to really come. And during the break, Dr. Uri said, Ross, who is this guy? And you know how kids are. He said, well, that's my dad. He said, no. What I mean is, where did he come from? And he said, well, we came in from Dallas. He said, no. You know, one of those kind of things. And Ross says, why? You know, and he said, well, I just sat there and I heard what amounts to a new paradigm. I mean, we talk about paradigms a lot and paradigm shifting, but he said this was a true paradigm, a shift that kind of cut through all the ideologies, sociologies, theologies, philosophies, sociologies, those all the studies that he had done in 17 countries. And he said, this is universal. And he was really excited about it. And I didn't know that, but I'll take it. Because I know that there is hardly an exception where you can't apply the Life Formula and begin to get clarity to our thinking, maybe shift our opinions, you know, just take a new perspective on things. And I know it's great for reducing stress and establishing relationships and understanding. And I swear I have never one time since it began to come together seen a human dynamic that couldn't be favorably influenced with its understanding. And that's kind of fun.
I think one of the fundamental precepts that makes this idea of love and fear work is that it gives you the power to choose.
Yes, exactly.
And so often, I think, in our relationships and in our life generally, we abdicate that power to the other person. It's all their fault, our boss, our partner, our child, or to the situation. It's all the situation's fault. I have no power here to make anything different, so I'll keep on sucking my thumb and things will be the same way.
See, that's subjective thinking, which is most common. I mean, there's no question that a viewer listening to this, if they could really acknowledge, understand, and accept the fact that their tendency is to be subjective, and that's a very painful place to be. I mean, essentially subjectivity, I suppose in one way of putting it, is that the person feels as though they're the center of the universe and that things are happening to them. I heard that in a conversation the other day. This woman had an appointment with us, and she called to say she couldn't make it. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, what happened?" And she said, "Well, my car broke down and the cat got sick. You know, why do these things keep happening to me?" Can you hear it? You know what I mean? I mean, the car breaking down is not something that happened to her. That's something that happened, you know what I mean? And yet she's internalizing it as though somehow someone is orchestrating this plot, you know what I mean? To make her life difficult. Yeah, and there's a feeling there. And you know, it's easy to get certified. I remember some years ago, I went to Cancun. And it was late at night, and I felt, you know, like taking for a walk, and I went out on the beach. And as I was walking, I took a long walk, maybe a couple of miles along the beach. And one thing I was very conscious of, that as I walked along the beach, the moonbeam that come across the ocean, you know how that'll do that, was always on me.
Wherever you went.
Wherever I went, that's where the beam was.
Following you.
And then the waves would come up, you know, and they would be this little liquor, if you would, that would come up and play around with my toes and ankles and what have you, and disappear. And it was much further closer to me than anything else along the beach. And like I was being selected to touch, if you would, by nature. I mean, it's silly, but you kind of, gee, you'd really feel like you're the center of the universe. And there's all kinds of language, of course, in our society that justifies that kind of posturing. And it's unfortunate because it's really not a very safe place. It's not a place of authority and influence. Rather, you're kind of the victim. And boy, there's a lot of it out here. Now, objectivity, of course, is understanding. So that's one thing about the life formula. It'll allow you to be objective, to look out and see things, and be careful of the opinions that you develop. Now, you get a little bit more cautious in your thinking when you realize what that is. Since we brought it up, too, we can expand on it a little bit. We had no idea of going in this direction, but I don't know if we've ever really discussed at length the fact that we are by nature reactive, okay? In other words, we have a brain here that at the very base of it there is a thalamus and hypothalamus, which could be the core, if you would, or the basic foundation of the subconscious, unconscious, subliminal mind. And this is a survival mechanism, okay? Now, this job is to keep you alive at any cost. And the reality of it is that every impulse that comes to us, knows every vision, every sound, every smell, every taste, goes right straight through the system to the subconscious mind. Knows we call it an impulse, okay? An impulse. And whenever there's an impulse, there is an impact. In other words, whatever is occurring goes straight through and impacts on that subconscious mind. And whenever there's an impact, there is going to be, by cause and effect, equal and opposite react, all those things, there's going to be a react. And so there's a reaction, and little electrochemicals are spewed out into the brain for immediate interpretation. Okay? If it's a new experience that you've never had before, you've got something to deal with. You know, I mean, there is or may be a real reason for fear. On the other hand, if it's happened over and over again, okay, after a while you develop what I call a psychic sieve. A psychic sieve. And there's a sort of it's a sieve there that says, okay, we've done this before, it's okay, no problem. And so the reaction doesn't even become apparent externally.
In any circumstance, however, all these incoming impulses are subject to interpretation.
Right, exactly. And they can get interpreted very quickly by a psychic sieve. It's unconscious. We don't even hardly think about it. On the other hand, sometimes if that information gets out, then you got to really deal with it, okay, intellectually. And by the way, if that intellectual dealing, okay, provides you with a whole lot of other people's opinions and input, you may not develop a healthy sieve. Or so you develop what could be a faulty opinion. And yet, once that's an opinion and we've made an investment in it, and we can make fools out of ourselves in our posturing and positioning and what have you. I mean, it's really, really difficult. But the thing of it is, once that sieve is developed, there's a cognitive sieve that can serve us or not. Again, there's a choice. Okay, that cognitive sifting that goes on. And it's fascinating how that happens. in order to expand our thinking in our mind, we have to kind of keep reaching out intellectually and saying, what's that about? What's really going on? Have a new experience, ask a question, challenge a conclusion in order to develop a broader and brighter sieve. Because the more sophisticated this becomes, the more open we are, the more objective we become, the less pain that we have in our life, the less misunderstandings that can occur. I mean, there's a nice place on the other side. And I'm so optimistic about our future because we're getting better and better and better and better at every single thing in our life. So it's fascinating, and we can provide information in this series. And by inviting people to live essays and what have you, they can come and pick up on some of this information. Can you think of any specific things that have come up that you have used some of this information to apply on?
Oh boy, that's a good question.
You keep doing this to me all the time. So I'm going to get you. Yeah. Any specifics that came up?
Any specifics, huh? I had someone come to me the other day, like I mentioned earlier, and they were really struggling with a coworker. How do I make this relationship be different than it is? And we talked a little bit about love and fear. And an interesting question came up. They could understand the concept. They could grasp that real quickly because it's actually very simple. But the question was, I know what to do, but I don't know if I have enough strength and courage to do it. I don't know if I can be patient and respond with love in the face of repeated rejection, repeated animosity, and rebellion on the part of this other individual. How long can I stay in a love mode without getting back into
losing it?
Without losing it.
And that's true. There's no question that if you're repeatedly exposed to inappropriate behavior, there has to be a point somewhere where you address it, okay, in order to calm it, to communicate about it. However, I'll tell you.
You can still do that with from a love mode.
Absolutely. I mean, you can, if you're in fact, you can do it more comfortably because if you're objective, you're more communicative, you're conscious, you're in command, you can actually evidence your authority more. Yeah, that's a pretty good place. There is a simple thing that happens, though, that it may not ever come to that if you are a little bit patient at first, is that people tend to make adjustments, in other words, purposely change, for people, not because of them. I know we've talked about that, but this is coming at it from another angle. If you posture and position yourself with someone that they're wrong and you're right and they should change and what have you, they're going to chisel themselves in granite. That's just natural as breathing. Wouldn't expect them to do anything else. But if you are patient and kind and you begin to generate feelings of love and the gestures of love, the kinetics of love, that people begin to realize that they want this in their life, and so they begin to make adjustments in order to bask in it. I've seen it happen over and over and over again. Nothing original here, collative perhaps, but there's a book written by Dr. Jampolsky, Gerald Jampolsky, I think it is, and it's about love and fear. In fact, the title of that book is Love is Letting Go of Fear.
Yes. And
there's cartoons in there and illustrations and what have you, and there's a lot of support for what we're talking about there. And I've seen it practiced, I've seen it work, and there's an assurance out there. And as this occurs, of course, it's easy to occur again and again, and we get better and better as a society. So I'm getting
what we discussed about was, well, you can force this person to do what you want them to do, and they'll do it, but will they sabotage the greater work?
Right.
And if you're going to be a team player here and in a creative process, you can't afford the sabotage, which will be much more subtle and much more insidious and much more damaging. And how can you get people on your side? You want them to be for you and not against you or indifferent. And it really, I think it boils down to what are their motivations? And how can you motivate them to want your best interest?
One thing, too, that moves this communication along, I'm sorry we don't have one this evening, but is a feelings list. You remember we worked with one here some weeks ago, and if you could get a feelings list and say you have an adversarial condition and two people posturing, if each one of those people will sit down with a feelings list and take that issue, whatever it happens to be, not everything in general, but just that issue, and indicate how they feel about it, okay, and then swap those lists and talk about it with the understanding that those words are coming from love and fear, people will be surprised. I find that people are surprised, they feel that way, and once they acknowledge that indeed is based on fear, and then we can find out what that fear is based on, whether it's the idea of being overlooked or being ignored or being put upon or whatever it happens to be, and that's not really happening. Boy, I mean, peace can reign very, very quickly.
That's
I've seen
a very
relationships
good idea.
mended. Oh, it's a great communication tool.
Now, how do you get two grown men to sit down with a feelings list and identify their feelings? That takes a little courage.
Yeah, it takes some authority, and it takes a suggestion, and people have to be willing to move forward and be open. Some people aren't because they're afraid. I mean, they know they're right, and boy, that's a terrible position.
Well, that's interesting, Bern. I took a seminar last weekend, and the title of the seminar was Taking a Risk, and there were several seminars we could choose from. It was interesting to me that that particular class was only half full, and there was standing room only in some of the others. So obviously there weren't many people who wanted to take enough of a risk to find out what it was like to...
Well, it's a tragedy, because we live in a society, I'll tell you, where the greatest risk we can take today is not to take one.
I agree with you.
Boy, I mean, you get solidified into some perspective or some idea, and you're going to get left behind in this society. I mean, we can have positions about politically correct and all this kind of stuff, but the fact of the matter is, if you're not in a state of growth, you're diminishing. Because the people around you are growing and understanding and reaching out, you're going to get passed by. And so this is a challenge to everybody to reach out, to read, to study, to think by writing, to plan, to expose yourself to new ideas. It's kind of like, for example, we're taping this show in Sacramento, California. And I know that there's probably 300 seminars a month in this city. That's about 10 a day. That's not bad. You know, and there's probably more, but 300 seminars a month. And they're being attended by the same people that attended them last month and a month ago and prior to that. There's a segment of our community who has found the seminar experience as a way of quantum leaping. It's not like attending a college class or a lecture. I mean, seminars are designed to compilate a lot of experience into an hour or two, give us the tools and the ideas, and send people out, and they can make immediate differences in relationships, in their careers, their jobs. It doesn't matter. And to get connected to those things and to get into the loop. Now, a lot of people who aren't in the loop are the ones behind the wall. I know when we go out into the world to prospect for people to come to our seminar series, I encounter a lot of people in human resource departments, owners of companies, general managers of units of companies, who make an immediate decision that they're not interested for sometimes as many as 200 people who are behind the wall, painful, you know, overwhelmed, agitated, upset, and someone is saying, oh no, we don't need that sort of thing here. We do all our own training. And yet they're right in the midst of chaos. And it's really tragic. That people will make those kind of decisions. So as individuals, we have to kind of say, hey, what's going on out here? One good place to start may be, you know, this learning center that's here in town. Maybe a good place to kind of peek through some of those, and they're inexpensive, and go to them. Or accept one of our tickets and come as a guest. You have to get a flavor of what that's like. Because a lot of times, see, the subconscious mind goes, seminar? You know, I don't do seminars. You know what I mean? If you've never done one, it's kind of an awesome thing.
Then you need to stop and ask yourself, why? Why don't I do seminars?
Exactly.
Why not?
Why not?
Why
exactly.
shouldn't I?
Exactly.
Is it illegal? Is it immoral? Is it unethical? And if you can pass those three questions, why not try
Give it a try.
Give
Sure.
it a try.
Give it.
I want to just add a little bit more. It seems like a lot of times we don't do things because we're afraid we're going to fail. And as a matter of fact, that was one of the questions someone asked in that seminar I attended last weekend. What do? We have a big challenge or project, but I'm afraid of failing. How do I deal with that fear, and what do I do if I fail?
You know, I think we've been misled in that. I honestly don't think we're nearly as afraid of failure as we've been led to believe. We're afraid of being embarrassed.
That's probably a good point.
Yeah. In other words, we're afraid of starting out on a project and not making it and looking like an idiot. You know, I mean, that's uncomfortable. We've all failed enough. We can handle failure. But it's the incompletes, you know what I mean, the embarrassment that comes from not succeeding. It's not the failure, it's the embarrassment of not succeeding.
And how sad to limit your life because of embarrassment.
Terrible.
Well, and the other thing that occurred to me was that maybe it's not whether you succeed or fail, but what you learn along the way.
Exactly.
It makes all the difference.
Exactly.
And I found in my life that my biggest challenges and trials have always been my greatest successes, whether I completed what I set out to do or not, because of what I learned and what I took with me from that experience. And my peaceful, happy, relaxing vacation times, although they provided a nice respite from the challenges of my life, never taught me anything.
You know what's tragic? I hear it every single day too. That people say, "Oh no, I wouldn't want that responsibility." You know, like they're in a company, and there's an opening, and they disqualify themselves. And I've never been able to understand that. Because, I mean, to venture out and to go ahead and move to a new plane is really easier than maybe we've been led to believe by well-meaning parents or society, or I don't know where you get these ideas. But to go out there and to go ahead and get ready and prepare yourself to offer yourself to bigger and better opportunities, because nothing is usually that great a leap. In other words, it's not like, it's not going to be probably a giant step. In other words, it's a tentative baby step almost, and yet to the subconscious mind it seems and feels like a giant step, and it's not.
Is it the embarrassment factor again? I don't want to look bad in front of my coworkers.
I think
my
so,
boss,
coupled with the fact that the
wife,
subconscious
my
mind is
children.
the status quo pro. See, if we're not aware, our subconscious mind wants everything to stay just the way it is. Even if it's not very good, at least we know that's the way it is, and I'm alive. It's so important to remember that our controlling device, doesn't have to be a controlling device, but essentially for most people, our dominant voice inside our mind comes from a subconscious mind that has no consciousness at all about what can be, only what has been. And it's satisfied with what has been because it means we're still alive. It's a survival mechanism, and therefore I call it a status quo pro. Really good at holding you right where you are. Let the conscious mind, let your imagination, let your vision go ahead and take over and go ahead and move forward, taking some of the, or if you're not ready to move, there's no reason why you can't find places to prepare to move. I mean, there's classes out here. For example, I have never, since 1972, I have never had anyone come to a seminar that didn't say, "Gee, I wish I'd have heard this sooner." You know, what a tragedy. I wish I'd have heard this sooner. We've had people say, if I'd have heard this 6 months ago, I wouldn't be in divorce today. If I'd have heard this sooner, I wouldn't be working where I'm working. If I'd have heard this, you know, over and over again. And, I mean, the idea is to, and it's not just this seminar. I mean, there's so many that I could recommend without reservation where they would probably feel exactly the same way. I wish I'd have heard this sooner. I wish I'd have done this sooner. Now, would you rather be able to say that sooner or later? Or never? See,
Or never.
Or never. Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense at all. We've got capacities, marvelous capacities, and we just want to exercise them. Just go ahead and practice stuff and do stuff.
Well, Bern, you know, I've actually come in contact with a few people in my life who are almost more uncomfortable with things staying the status quo than with trying something new and different. And I wonder if that's because they have, as we have discussed in previous shows, practiced and exercised doing things differently in their life to such a constant degree that for their status quo pro, sameness is scary.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And we've talked about, well, just try going home from work a different route. Give yourself little challenges and little things to try each day and complete that are different and get you out of your routine, and then build from that into bigger, more challenging
We're having to
avenues.
assume that these people who are reaching out and doing are doing it in a positive way.
Right.
I mean, I'm assuming that you're, but even then I can see people who, actually, if you've got a good mind, you might even go out and at least expose yourself to ideas that you're really apprehensive about. You mean, so just to have that experience, because we've got to have some faith in our ability to make good judgments. For example, I've had a lot of people, I've had people refuse to come to what I do, and I've had people who came to what I do saying and admitting that they nearly didn't because they were afraid of what they might hear. And knows that their belief system would be challenged, and I can understand a little some of that, but to be willing to go over there, it's kind of like, it might be very difficult for a Christian to go to a Buddhist church. You know, that could be a very fearsome thing, I suppose, but why? You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean you're going to have to become a Buddhist.
Right.
You know, but you can go there and see what it is. In fact, in looking at that, you may find some comparable issues that would bring you together rather than keeping you apart. Because I know there's people over here that just thinks that's evil.
You certainly would have more of appreciation for the people,
Sure.
the culture, the beliefs.
So you have to admit, some of those people are marvelous, and they're kind, and they're gracious, and they're loving, and they're contributive, and so something is going on that makes it okay. So yeah, we have to be really, really careful. My gosh, time is rushing. We're not through yet, but we have just a couple of minutes. How do you want to wrap this up? Yeah, I'm glad you brought this stuff up.
Oh,
Good
boy.
review.
Yeah, this has been fascinating for me. Well, I think that we need to challenge our viewers to have some completions in their life and have some challenges in their life. And I have a very dear friend who says to me every few weeks or so, I need to feed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a gentleman who's the top salesman in his company, he has the highest closure rate,
Mm-hmm.
and very successful in many things that he does. And I hear him say, I need to feed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I need a good book to read. I need a seminar to go to. I need to have the great thinkers of the world filling me up with material. And I think it's important that we do that, because even if we are exposed to new ideas every now and then, and if we have a really good attitude and all that stuff, I think we're going to be like the people we hang out with and the books we read. And so we've got to keep doing that, because we're not always around the people we want to be around.
Exactly.
So going to the seminars, reading books, things like that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's an exciting thing, and since we're talking about this, we might take this opportunity to say this, that as a viewer, what you need to do is to go to the phone right now. Just go to the phone and dial 1-800-661-3490. It might be apprehensive, it might be something you have never done before, but just go call the number, leave a message. In fact, you might even catch me live if you wait a few minutes, because I'll dash home and get the call if I can. But 1-800-661-3490, and just say I was watching Life Talk, and you said that we could have a free ticket, and I'll send out 2 $39 tickets to a special event we got coming up. And you can come and just, hide out. Just be there in the back of the room and watch what's going on and see if you don't enjoy it. And I've never had anyone who didn't. I cannot remember a single time in over a quarter century when people say, well, I wasted my time, and we're not going to take any more of yours. This is Life Talk, and I'm Bern
Moses.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Bern.
Be sure to call.